Hello! So today I'm going to be talking about King Sorrow by Joe Hill. King Sorrow is an epic, decade-spanning horror novel. Well, actually, I should say horror fantasy novel. It's about 6 friends who summon a dragon to solve a desperate problem they all have. However, by summoning this dragon, they are buying into a very deadly yearly pact that is going to test all of them. A pact that is going to, over time, corrode their lives and their relationships. I have a dreamy, so let's give you some themey. This novel's covering themes around loyalty versus sort of moral responsibility. We've got some grief and sorrow shoved in there. We've got a smidgen, and I mean a smidgen of dark academia. There's some talk of rare books and all that kind of stuff. There's college involved at points. And if you are an absolute hound dog for the dark academia, which I know some of you are, then yeah, it might tickle a little tickle of that itch. We're also looking at class and privilege and at the idea of like how money and power sort of changes a person's choices over time. And finally, I'd say we're looking at myth and folklore. Character time, character time, character time. So first up we have Arthur Oakes. Now Arthur Oakes, I would say, if we're looking for a kind of protagonist in this novel, is the closest to it, but it is quite evenly spread across the 6 friends. I say quite evenly spread, some get a little more than others, but overall it's a shared kind of story. But Arthur Oakes does kick everything into gear. He is being blackmailed. His mother is in prison, and people on the outside have got a connection to people on the inside, and she's kind of getting beaten up, tortured, all kinds of nasty things, and it will continue to happen unless Arthur steals these very rare books from the library that he works at. Arthur is very much driven by kind of like family, duty, and guilt. Next up we have Donovan Van McBride, and he's Arthur's loyal friend. Van is one half of a twin sibling bond that kind of anchors the dynamics of this group. I won't go too far into that for spoilers, but yeah, like both of the twins have this kind of, when they're together, they create a nice sort of even, balanced dynamic, and as things shift and change over time, you sort of see that dynamic shift over time. Next up, we have Donna McBride, is of course Van's twin sister, and she's fierce, she's fiery. She's also very complicated. She has a bit of bite, and she, at times throughout this novel, gives it quite a lot of sort of like physical and psychological shifts into kind of the power of what's happening to them is doing to her. Again, spoilers, but yeah, so yeah, she creates a very different dynamic as the novel sort of progresses. Next up, we have Gwen, she's thoughtful. She's nice, she's really, really smart, and later in the novel, her sort of conscience comes into play and shifts things dramatically. Next up, we have Alison, who is described in this novel as kind of like beautiful and very, very brave, and she represents the kind of cost of love in this novel, like the true cost of what they've done and the cost of what their decisions mean to kind of like them being able to embrace love and embrace relationships. Yeah. Next up, we have Colin Wren, who is uber wealthy, inherits lots of money from his parents, his grandparents, and he's the one who has access to all these kind of like rare books, and they get some from the library, but he has access to all this information that ends up leading him down the path of King Sorrow. And yeah, his sort of relationship with the group starts off as he's very generous, he gives his money gladly, and we start to see this sort of shift in him as kind of power takes over. And finally, we have King Sorrow, who is the antagonist. He is a dragon entity type thing that has been summoned by the 6. And he is far more than just a big old beastly monster that comes along and fucks shit up, even though that is exactly what he is. But he's quite terrifying. I found him quite scary, and I love the sections that he was in. He is a layered character. Obviously not as layered as the human characters in this story, but he does have layers. He loves riddles. And yeah, he's just, all I'm trying to say is he's much more than just a thing that turns up and causes destruction. His actual plans and his aims and the way he sort of plays against the rules that he set them really shifts and keeps the novel and him constantly interesting. There is, of course, various other characters who pop in and out of this novel, but I'm not going to go into too much detail for those. I'll let you discover them for yourselves. So, what did I like and what didn't I like? What I liked. The first thing I really loved is the ambition and scope of this novel. It's vast. It's a beastie boy. It's 900 plus pages. Now, you know I absolutely love long books, but overall, I would say it 100% delivers and deserves to be its running length. It's, you know, there are maybe a couple of small moments, a couple of moments that drag just a little bit, but what 900 plus page book isn't going to have sections in it where some people are a bit like, you know, I didn't dig that section as much as others, but overall, I felt extremely rewarded for the time that I put in and the page count, and I'm not going to lie, like, I was so entertained, I flew through this. Next thing I really loved is how this novel is able to, and I think better, don't tell Stephen King this, better than Stephen King does it. I thought this novel was able to keep really character focused. I say really, it was able to keep character focused whilst also like basking in this expansive plot with twists and turns. It was able to do both things, give me good character connection along with like a really thrilling sort of journey along the way, and that is everything I'm looking for. The next thing I really enjoyed is there is quite an imaginative kind of blend between horror and fantasy at play. I would say it maybe leans a bit more towards the fantasy-esque stuff than it does necessarily the horror, but there's still moments where I was like, this is very creepy. I did this book on Kindle and audiobook. I was sort of jumping back and forth, and there are moments with King Sorrow and the way that the audiobook is done with like the sound. They put some effort into this audiobook, and it paid off, because genuinely at moments like made the hairs on my arms stand up. It did a great job, and I've lost my train of thought, but either way, whatever I was saying, good. Next thing I really enjoyed, and I've already hinted at this, but King Sorrow as an antagonist. I found him, I just loved every time he was on the page, every time he popped up. I was like, yes, we're back with this devious motherfucker. It was really, really good. Next thing I really enjoyed is that I thought the sort of handling of long-term decisions, like the things we do to justify the things we do, and that guilt that can sometimes come with some of our decisions, especially this big decision this group of 6 have made. I thought that it was, it was quite nuanced in the way we were exploring all those individual kind of ways that these choices have affected them over time. And I mean, it's still a horror fantasy novel, so don't get me wrong, this isn't like literary fiction. So everything I'm saying, don't think I'm comparing it to something like Stoner. Like, it's, you know, completely different ballpark kind of thing. But yeah, I did think for a novel like this, it was nuanced in a way that really kept me going, oh, I love the journey that we've gone on with these characters and the effects of their choices. The next thing I really enjoyed about this one is it felt like epic and cinematic. I just like, and maybe this isn't a good thing to be thinking in this way whilst reading a book, but I just kept thinking to myself, this will make a great TV show, like an 8-episode HBO series. Make it happen, someone. I just think if you can get the effects of the kind of dragon right, and it doesn't feel naff and it doesn't feel too bombastic or too unrealistic, if they can nail that, I don't know, it just felt really cinematic, really epic, and I just loved it for it. Next thing I really enjoyed is it's been a while since I've read a novel with proper set pieces. Like, oh, this is that set piece, this is that set piece. And this novel has some proper set pieces in it, like the aeroplane one. No, I'm not going to spoil things. I'm not going to go through, but it has some really great set pieces in it that I was just like, oh, I'm so in on this. And again, I don't know if everyone will be into every sort of section of this novel, but I was. Next thing I really enjoyed was Joe Hill's prose. I thought was really decent and can be very lyrical in moments. Of course, it's a horror fantasy thriller type novel, and the writing is very much serving the story and the characters, as opposed to try and conjure up any kind of sort of poetic feeling in the rhythm of the writing at all. But there are moments dealing with some of the sort of more complex emotional themes that I thought Joe Hill's writing really served those moments rather well. And the final thing I really enjoyed is it's a long journey, 900 plus pages, and it felt worth it, everybody. I had a really enjoyable time all the way through. As mentioned, there are a couple of moments where maybe I was a bit like, this is dragging slightly, but never really to the detriment of me enjoying myself, just where I was a bit like, oh, this could pick up a little bit, and then it did. So, yeah, it felt worth it. There was an emotional payoff for me. Yeah. Oh, it's a goodie. What didn't I like? The first thing I didn't like, and I've already mentioned it, I've literally just mentioned it, but I'll say it anyway, does feel a little bit slightly bloated in some moments, and it could have done with a little trim. The next thing I didn't like, I would say, is the start of this novel. I think the start of this novel is the weakest part of this novel. I also felt like the reason for sort of Arthur making this pact, or for the group doing what they didn't feel as life-threatening enough for them to give themselves over so willingly to this very, very dangerous entity. Now, of course, I know they're sort of doing it by mistake and they were just doing it for fun to see what would happen, to help them out kind of thing. But, yeah, I felt like they could have found an initial hook for the summoning other than the sort of blackmail of Arthur. Or spent a bit more time building up the group dynamics and how much they loved Arthur in order to kind of allow that thing to pay off. I don't know. It just felt quite sort of rushed into, all of a sudden, they're summoning this dragon that's going to kind of curse them for the rest of their lives. And I mean, you do get frustrated. Like, you do understand, like, what these three people on the outside are doing to, like, his mum and what they're doing to him. You do get riled up. You are like, oh, I hope someone just fucking kills these people. So there was enough emphasis there for me to be angry about it. But I don't know. For the whole gang to get involved, it just... I don't know if I'm making sense. It just felt a bit rushed. The next thing I didn't like is that the tone of the dialogue when they were at college felt like much younger people. Now, I don't know if that's because I'm coming from a point of my age. It just felt a little bit immature, the way this group of friends was talking to each other when they're meant to be like, 19, 20 years old. It felt like 14, 15-year-olds talking with each other. I don't know. That's just me. Please let me know if you read this novel and you felt the same. It all sort of evened itself out as they grew, but it felt like, they were just pitched a bit too young in the way they sounded at the start. It just didn't feel like college students. Yeah. It just felt a bit weird. I was a bit like, when it first started, I was like, and I soon got on board and I was soon like in with it because it is fun, it is entertaining, and it does have its moments of humour within the writing. So all these things did pull me along. It was at no point was ever like, I'm backing out of this, but it just made me go at times like, oh, that just doesn't feel like how a 19 or 20-year-old would talk to each other. That's it. Yeah. And my final dislike, and I kind of hinted at this earlier on, is that I don't feel like all of the characters in the six get equal footing. I feel like everyone gets their story, everyone gets their moment, everyone gets fleshed out, but I don't know, just others felt like they got a lot more time than some, and I kind of would have wanted that to be a little bit more equal. Don't get me wrong, we get time with all of them. This isn't like in which we barely hear from any of them, but some just get a bit more than others. I just found myself going, with a 900-page novel, I would have liked to have kind of connect with each of them a little bit more thoroughly. So there you go, that's my likes and dislikes of King's Sorrow, the latest Joe Hill novel, and it is a great Halloweeny spooky season read, everybody. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. At points I was like, this is an absolute sheer fire 5-star from me, but I think I'm going to be a bit petty and say it's probably like a 4.5 or a 4 to a 4.5 if I'm being really honest. Just a few of those things bringing it down. But overall, who gives a shit about star ratings? I had a great time. It's 900 pages and I read it quicker than most books I read on the book along list. That's, I don't know, maybe I was just in the mood for something thrilling and engaging and exciting with twists and turns that I couldn't predict, and that's exactly what I got. And if that is what you're after, then pick this book up right now. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. I hope you're well and you're all enjoying whatever you might be reading. I'll see you all on the next one.